Picture this. The ash is deep, up to your knees. It sticks to everything. The air tastes bad, like a mix of fuel and sulfur. It reminds you that you are in a terrible place. Every yard you move forward costs blood and many lives. A Marine hides behind a sharp rock. His heart is beating fast. Bullets hit the rock just over his head. His rifle is useless here. The Japanese soldiers are deep inside a cave, behind a strong steel door. The cave is under 10 feet of hard rock. It is a dead end. Then a quiet voice yells, "Flame up!" A soldier carrying a 60-pound flamethrower moves past. He is a clear target. He aims the weapon. He pulls the trigger, and a stream of fire shoots into a small opening in the rock. The opening is as small as a mail slot. 30 seconds later, the cave is no longer a cave. It is an oven, a hot tomb. That is how the difficult war on Iwo Jima was slowly and effectively won. So, how do you beat an enemy you cannot see? An enemy in 18 kilometers of tunnels that survived the biggest naval bombing of the war? How do you win against a defense made to take everything you have and fight back even harder? You fight fire with fire. I mean that for real. Iwo Jima. The name makes you think of a hard fight. This small island, just 8 square miles of volcano rock, was a fortress. The land itself was a weapon. The Japanese commander, General Tadamichi Kuribayashi, had turned the island into something special. Most of its danger was not on top. It was buried deep under the ground in a maze of deadly traps. Think about it. Tunnels went down 5 stories, like a city for war underground. These were not simple holes. They connected over 1,500 rooms. There were hospitals, kitchens, and strong forts, all linked together. From the top, you only saw black volcano rock. The ground was hard to walk on and broke boots and tanks. But under that empty ground was the real Japanese defense. This large network of about 18 kilometers was a well-made defense system. It was built to stop anything the Americans used against it. The Americans had to take this piece of land. Why? It was located halfway between American bomber bases and their targets in Tokyo. Without Iwo Jima, damaged bombers flying back would fall into the ocean. But with Iwo Jima, fighter planes could refuel and protect the bombers all the way. This would help more bombers survive and improve the bombing plan. So the Marines landed on February 19, 1945. They knew it would be a tough fight, but thought it would be over in about 4 days. It took 36 days. For 36 days, they fought hard for every inch. Before the Marines landed, ships had bombed the island for weeks with great power. But when the Marines reached the beach, the Japanese guns started firing right on time. The bombing had not done much damage. The island's rock soaked up the hits and then threw back deadly metal and machine gun fire. Normal weapons, like big guns and bombs, could not stop the enemy in their deep, hidden spots. The Japanese plan of deep defense and hidden forts made usual attack methods a death sentence. The usual military plan was that a bomb pack or a bazooka shot could destroy a bunker. On Iwo Jima, that plan did not work. Rockets that were supposed to break concrete just made small marks. Rifle bullets bounced right off the strong concrete and steel. Grenades, the bombs you throw by hand, rolled back down hills. Sometimes the Japanese defenders would even kick them back. Tanks got stuck in the soft volcano ash. This made them easy targets. Even when they could move, their main guns were often not strong enough to hurt the deep and hidden Japanese spots. Demolition teams crawled forward with bombs on poles. They tried to place them right at the bunker openings, but the Japanese had designed their defenses so that other forts could protect each other. If one spot was attacked, other caves would shoot machine guns and rifles. This often killed the demolition teams before they got close. The number of deaths was awful. For every yard the Marines gained, 1 Marine was killed or badly hurt. Imagine that. Every 3 feet forward cost an American life or a bad injury. It was very clear that something else was needed. Something that could go where bombs could not. Something that could turn a cold, dark cave into a hot oven. making the enemy's safe place their fiery grave. The normal tools of war were not working. The Marines needed a new kind of weapon. This is where the M2 flamethrower came in. It was not a new weapon, but on Iwo Jima, it became the most important one. This weapon was simple but very destructive. It had 2 tanks of sticky gasoline, called napalm, and 1 tank of compressed gas. These were connected to a wand that could shoot fire about 60 yards. It weighed almost 70 pounds, but it held great power. And that fuel? Napalm. It was the same sticky, terrible stuff that would be famous in the Vietnam War. In 1945, it was very good at its job. Napalm was not just liquid fire, it was fire that stuck to things. It stuck to skin, rock, and clothes, burning with a strong heat that was hard to put out. A 4-second spray from the M2 could use up 7 gallons of this fire. The weapon had been used before on other islands, where it was helpful. But on Iwo Jima, it went from a side weapon to the main tool that changed the fight. Why? Because it was the only tool that could get past the forts. It did not need to break through 10 feet of concrete. It just needed a small crack or opening. Fire poured through small holes, went around corners, and went down into the deepest tunnels. Steel doors that could stop explosions bent from the great heat. Oxygen, which people need to live, was burned up. Lungs were cooked inside bodies. The physical damage was huge, but the effect on their minds was maybe even bigger. No one wants to die by fire. The fear of being burned alive in an underground oven broke the will of the strongest defenders. The flamethrower did not just kill, it scared people and forced the Japanese out of spots that had seemed safe just moments before. It changed the battle and offered a fix to a problem that seemed impossible to solve. Being the flamethrower soldier on Iwo Jima was a special kind of awful. It was like wearing a big, bright target. The flamethrower tanks could not have armor. They had to be light enough for a person to carry over the rough ground, but that also made them dangerous. One good bullet shot through the gas tank, and the soldier would disappear in a hot flash of fire. The danger to the soldier was a real and harsh part of the job. So the Marines quickly came up with new plans. A flamethrower team was not just one man, it was a small group. Usually 2 riflemen went with the flamethrower soldier. Their lives depended on each other. One rifleman often carried an extra fuel tank. The other watched for snipers and machine guns, or any danger that could end their mission and their lives. They moved very carefully, often at dusk or in thick smoke, to hide from the Japanese defenders. When they could, they would approach a cave from behind. They used dips in the ground for cover. They often used hand signals to talk because voices could give away their position. The soldier would shoot a short burst of flame to burn the oxygen and clear the opening. Then he would hide while the rifleman threw grenades into the entrance. If the defenders ran out of the cave to escape the fire, the rifleman would shoot them. If they stayed inside, the heat and lack of oxygen would kill them. It was personal, simple, and very effective warfare. Each flamethrower team showed the close, hard fighting that defined Iwo Jima. By day 7, too many flamethrower teams were being lost. A new plan was needed, one with more protection and more firepower. The answer was to turn Sherman tanks into flamethrowers. The Navy gave them special flame-throwing parts. These were put inside the Sherman tanks. From the outside, the tanks still looked normal. This was an important trick. Japanese gunners could not tell the flame tanks from regular ones, so they did not know which ones to shoot at first. The benefits were clear right away. The flame could now reach 150 yards instead of just 60. This was much safer. The tank's armor protected the crew, and it could hold much more fuel, enough for 80 seconds of continuous fire. These armored flamethrowers, called Zippos by the Marines, became the leaders of every attack. Their plan was harsh but worked well. A Zippo would drive up to a cave and shoot a steady stream of napalm into it for 10 seconds. The heat would bend steel, use up oxygen, and turn the inside into an oven. Then, the tank would back up, while other soldiers rushed in and sealed the entrance with bombs. This trapped any soldiers left inside. This plan worked so well that by the end of the battle, 1 out of every 4 Shermans on Iwo Jima had a flamethrower. A Japanese diary found later said, "The fire tanks are the worst. They burn the spirit out of strong positions. It was not just about killing the enemy, it was about destroying their will to fight." The whole island was a terrible place, but 3 spots caused many marine deaths: the meat grinder, Airfield 2, and the amphitheater. Each one was a hard challenge, and each one was beaten by the same harsh flamethrower plan. The meat grinder was an area of hills that ate up a whole group of Marines in 3 days. This area was a maze of connected trenches, caves, and machine gun nests that could all fire on the same spots. Taking it needed a non-stop, direct attack. Airfield 2 was an important goal, but it was protected by strong concrete forts. These forts allowed Japanese guns to shoot across the open runway, making it a death trap. The amphitheater was a tall cliff with many holes for guns. It fired straight down onto the beach, making it dangerous for Marines to land and move. The defenders there had the high ground and seemed impossible to reach. But each of these strong spots was finally taken using the same plan. First, they used thick smoke to hide the Marines' approach. Then, they fired machine guns and mortars to keep the enemy down. Then came the flamethrower, small ones for the lower gun holes and the powerful Zippo tanks for the higher spots and bigger forts. The small units would take out the lower gun spots. The Zippo tanks would spray the higher areas with fire. Once the openings were burning, engineers would move in with bombs to seal them off. This trapped the defenders inside. This plan was harsh and was used hundreds of times on the island. The price for each spot was still very high. One flamethrower soldier used 3 different flamethrowers in one morning because the first 2 were shot off his back. But the hard truth was that without the flame, these spots would not have been taken. Normal weapons could not get the enemy out. Only the hot, choking power of the flamethrower could. On the other side of the fire, the Japanese defenders faced a unique kind of fear. When a few survivors were questioned later, they shared a scary detail. They were ordered every night to kill the fire soldiers first. The flamethrower soldier was the #1 target. Snipers would aim for the fuel tanks on the soldier's back. If they could not break the tanks, they tried to break the hoses to stop the weapon or cause an explosion. General Kuribayashi himself knew how dangerous this weapon was. He ordered his men to build wooden walls inside tunnels to slow the fire. But wood still burned. The strong heat would still cook the air in the tunnels. The effect on the mind was huge. For many soldiers, the idea of burning alive was too much. Some chose to run out in a final attack, preferring to be shot rather than burned to death. Others, in terrible moments, shot their own wounded men to stop their screams or to save them from a fiery death. The flamethrower completely flipped how soldiers felt. For the attackers, seeing a bunker burn was a good sign. It was a clear victory against a hidden enemy. For the defenders, their safe forts became a source of fear. Their safe place became a trap. The weapon did not just break bodies, it broke spirits. The victory on Iwo Jima came at a very high and painful price. About 70,000 Marines landed on the island. Nearly 7,000 of them died. Another 20,000 were wounded, many of them badly. It was the only battle in the Pacific where American losses were higher than Japanese losses. A sadder truth is that flamethrower units had 3 times more losses than other soldier units. The risk was part of their job. Only about 300 Marines were trained to carry the M2 flamethrower. 1 in 9 of these trained men died, mostly from bullets hitting the fuel tanks on their backs. These men walked into a terrible fight carrying a terrible weapon on their shoulders. Yet, even with these awful losses, it's clear that using flamethrowers led to success. Areas without enough flamethrowers got stuck, but areas that had them were able to move forward yard by painful yard. Mount Suribachi, the famous mountain where the flag was raised, was captured because Marines used flamethrowers on every cave on its slopes. The last Japanese forts fell only after all the remaining Zippo tanks were used together in a wall of fire. The battle lasted 5 hard weeks, but the last bits of resistance ended when a final flamethrower tank burned out the general's cave. The flamethrower did not just help win Iwo Jima, it was the key factor. Iwo Jima was more than a battle. It was a hard lesson for the Marine Corps. It taught them, in a very real and painful way, that building forts for defense had changed. The old ways of war, where concrete and rock could stop most things, were gone. These strong defenses could now be beaten not by bigger bombs, but by chemistry, by the power of napalm and flame. After the war, military books were changed. The number of flamethrowers for each group of soldiers was doubled. This showed how useful they were. In the Korean War, a few years later, better and lighter flamethrowers were used, based on the lessons from Iwo Jima. But the lesson was not just about weapons, it was also about fear. Enemies who once thought they could hide in their underground forts now had a new fear: being burned alive. The flamethrower became a sign of death for hidden defenders. It is strange that the weapon that was so key to winning Iwo Jima was removed from US use by 1978. It was not because it did not work. It was because ideas about right and wrong in war changed. The harshness of the flamethrower became hard to accept. Yet, its lesson is still remembered. It is a reminder that in hard times, you need hard solutions. When the land itself is a weapon, you must attack the air the enemy breathes. You must make their safe place their tomb. So, how did flamethrowers win Iwo Jima? They did more than clear bunkers. They completely changed how defense worked. Tunnels made to protect soldiers became chimneys that made the heat worse. Caves that were meant to be safe were turned into hot ovens. In a battle where bullets bounced off rock and bombs just made scratches, fire found every crack and opening. Marines still had to pay with their lives for every yard. The cost was huge. But the stream of flame from the flamethrower bought them the inches that rifles and grenades could not. Against a hidden army under volcano rock, the United States Marine Corps brought the one weapon that could make the hidden enemy scared, and then, finally, burn.